At 0210 local time, on the black water of the Sea of Azov, a line of tankers was running for Crimea with every light off and every transponder dead. 8 of them, low in the water, heavy with fuel. No names broadcasting. No position pinging out to the world the way a legal ship is supposed to. To anyone watching a shipping map that night, this convoy simply did not exist. That was the whole idea. And it was about to become the reason none of them saw it coming. Because the empty stretch of sea these captains had chosen precisely because it looked empty had been watched for hours, and the thing watching it had already picked which tanker died first. Start with the ships themselves, because the ships are the story. Russia moves an enormous share of its oil on what the world has started calling the Shadow Fleet, a collection of aging, tired tankers with murky ownership, flags of convenience, and a habit of switching their tracking beacons off when they'd rather not be seen. Old hulls, cheap to buy, easy to lose, deliberately hard to trace. Think of it as a getaway car with the license plate covered and the registration in a stranger's name. The point isn't that the car is nice. The point is that if it gets caught, nobody official can be blamed, and there's always another one in the lot. The 8 in this convoy fit the mold exactly. Around 7,000 tons of dead weight each, roughly 140 meters long, a modest ship, nothing grand, built somewhere between 2006 and 2012, and every one of them already sitting on an international sanctions list, which is exactly why they were creeping across the Azov in the dark instead of steaming in openly by day. Start with the ships themselves, because the ships are the story. Russia moves an enormous share of its oil on what the world has started calling the Shadow Fleet, a collection of aging, tired tankers with murky ownership, flags of convenience, and a habit of switching their tracking beacons off when they'd rather not be seen. Old hulls, cheap to buy, easy to lose, deliberately hard to trace. Think of it as a getaway car with the license plate covered and the registration in a stranger's name. The point isn't that the car is nice. The point is that if it gets caught, nobody official can be blamed, and there's always another one in the lot. The 8 in this convoy fit the mold exactly. Around 7,000 tons of dead weight each, roughly 140 meters long, a modest ship, nothing grand, built somewhere between 2006 and 2012, and every one of them already sitting on an international sanctions list, which is exactly why they were creeping across the Azov in the dark instead of steaming in openly by day, which is what put 8 tankers in exactly the place someone had been waiting for them. The first one never heard the thing that killed it. On the bridge of the lead tanker, the watch was doing the thing exhausted men do at 2 in the morning, staring at nothing, trusting the dark. The captain, a merchant sailor who had spent his whole life moving other people's cargo and asking no questions about it, was thinking about the crossing, the schedule, the money, not about the sky. Then the sky arrived. The first hit walked a line of fire across the aft deck, and the fuel came alive. Not a neat cinematic fireball, a low, ugly spreading thing, orange climbing the superstructure, the crew running for the rail before anyone on the bridge had finished the sentence. What was that? And here is the part that would haunt every captain in that convoy for the rest of the night. There was no warship, no jet screaming overhead, no wake of an incoming boat, just fire arriving out of an empty sky onto a ship that officially wasn't there. What arrived were drones. Not the little quadcopters you're picturing. These were long-range strike drones flown by Ukraine's Unmanned Systems Forces, the branch built entirely around this kind of war, and specifically by the pilots the Ukrainians call Madyar's birds, the 414th, with an operator working under the call sign Kairos. Aircraft that launch far away, cross open water on their own, and put a warhead exactly where a joystick tells them to, guided by a man watching a black and white feed from somewhere safe and dry. For the price of one of those tankers, you could buy a great many of these drones. That is the entire economic engine of this war compressed into a single night. A cheap machine, flown by a man who will sleep in his own bed, trading itself for a ship worth 100 times more, and the fuel that a besieged peninsula was counting on. The second tanker caught it while the crews of the others were still watching the first one burn. Same signature, same fire crawling up from the waterline. And now the convoy understood, all at once, that the dark they had trusted was the trap. They did the only thing merchant crews can do, which is nothing useful. A tanker is not a warship. It cannot shoot back, cannot dodge, cannot outrun anything. It is a floating tank of fuel with a crew of civilians who signed up to move oil, not to fight, and who are now discovering that the flag of convenience game has a bill, and it had just come due at 2 in the morning in the middle of the Azov. One by one, the fire found them. 3, 4, 5. Somewhere behind the strike, in a room lit by monitors, this was not chaos. It was a work shift. Each pilot had a screen, a target, a cadence. Line up the ship, put the warhead into the hull where the fuel lived, watch it light, move to the next contact on the list. The Ukrainian commander overseeing it, Robert Brovdi, the man the call signs all answer to, better known as Madyar, would later describe the night's haul in the flat language of a man reporting inventory. The tankers, he said, were badly damaged and on fire. The shadow fleet, he said, was leaving the area. Then he added the line that told you this wasn't a one-off. The battle for Crimea's fuel, in the Sea of Azov, continues. By the time it was done, it wasn't only 8 tankers. A dry cargo ship had been hit in the same operation. So had a ferry, and later, that same day, the drones would come back and put 2 more tankers into the water, pushing the running tally, by Ukraine's own count, past a dozen vessels struck in a single stretch of hours. Every one of those tankers Ukraine says it identified by name. They read like a strange little roll call of the Shadow Fleet. Venera 3, the 2 Sanars, Crimea, Tati, Alexei Savrasov, Penelope, and an 8th named later. Ordinary commercial ships with ordinary commercial names, doing an extraordinary job of pretending to be innocent, right up until the moment the sky disagreed. Now zoom out, because the 8 burning hulls are not really the point. The point is the arithmetic they represent. Russia's whole answer to Western sanctions was this fleet. The idea that if you own enough disposable ships and hide the paperwork well enough, the oil keeps moving no matter what anyone in Washington or Brussels writes on a page. Sanctions were a problem you could paper over. What Ukraine did in the Azov that night is turn a paper problem into a physical one. You cannot paper over a ship that is on fire, and Crimea is where it bites hardest. A peninsula already rationing fuel, already blacked out, already declaring emergencies, was watching one of its last reliable supply routes burn on the water. As one Western analyst put it, watching the campaign unfold, Russia still doesn't seem to have a good answer to any of it. That's the sentence that should worry Moscow more than the fire. Not that 8 tankers were hit, that after months of this, the trucks, the refineries, the bridges, and now the sea, the men responsible for keeping Crimea supplied, are running out of roads, running out of rails, and now finding out the water isn't safe either.